be introducing topic to every one of you before we can dive into the conversation for today. Chris, it's good to have you on our platform this morning, this afternoon, I mean to say. Egbe, can you go ahead now and introduce Chris?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Egbe, I think I lost you.
Foreign Agricultural Service in the United States Consulate, Lagos, Nigeria. He has completed domestic assignments on United States agricultural trade and biotechnology policy, and oversees assignments as the Deputy Director of the Agricultural Trade Office, United States Embassy in China. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I'll take that again. He has also completed overseas assignments as the Deputy Director of the Agricultural Trade Office in the United States Embassy, Belgium, China, and as the Agricultural Attaché of the Agricultural Affairs, United States Embassy at Astana, Kazakhstan. He has a master's and PhD in agricultural leadership, education, and communication from Texas A&M University. He is a native of New York State. Let's put our hands together for our distinguished speaker for today. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Egbe, for that wonderful introduction. Chris, we're going to give you a few minutes to talk about yourself, and if there's something important that you would love to share with our participants this afternoon, please go ahead. Floyd, for you.
Did you say you're going to give me a few minutes? Did we turn this down so we don't hear the echo? Did we turn this down so we don't hear the echo?
Yeah,
people don't want to hear me talk twice. Once is enough. Yeah, people don't want to hear me talk twice. Once is enough. All right. Turn it all the way down. Thank you. Okay. The only thing is we can't hear the host, but so you got to introduce myself. Do I have a certain time limit? Are there going to be question and answers?
Yes, of course. We're going to have question and answer much later, but you have about 10 minutes.
Yes.
There about
just
talk about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, good afternoon. I'm from New York State originally. Was born there. Grew up in New York State. Now, a lot of times when I say New York, people think like New York City because it is the largest city in the United States of America. But I come from New York State, so just like Nigeria, I have states and then you have cities. So I'm from upstate New York, which is about 3 hours north from the big city. So it's much different from the big New York City. New York State is a lot more rural. And I didn't necessarily grow up in a farming or agriculture family, but I did eventually get into agricultural diplomacy. So I think that's what I'll be talking a little bit about today. So I'll talk a little bit about my story, about how I got here and some of the places I've been before Nigeria, and also some of my experiences in Nigeria. And hopefully we have some question and answer time as well. So again, I started in New York State. Didn't come from a farming family or an agriculture family. Maybe my grandparents, they worked in manufacturing factories, facilities. My parents worked in offices. And the United States, maybe 50 years ago, or certainly 100 years ago, We had a lot more farmers and a lot more people that were directly engaged in agriculture. But the economy's changed, technology's changed, so there's a lot more mechanization in the United States. So I think at one time, maybe 100, 150 years ago, about 90% of Americans were engaged directly in agriculture. Now I think it's maybe 1, 2, 3% were directly engaged in production. Now there's a lot more Americans who are doing things indirectly engaged in agriculture. Maybe they're not producing or they're farming, but they might be transporting products or processing agricultural products. So anyways, things have changed. I didn't start in a farming family, but I got really interested visiting other countries. My wife is from Guatemala, which is it's a country in Central America. It's just south of Mexico. They speak Spanish there. It's a tropical country. It's very similar to Nigeria, although it's very, very mountainous. So there are some differences, very mountainous, a lot of earthquakes. So some differences as well, but it's generally tropical, and so you can grow a lot of different products. It has great water, great soils, and because it's mountainous, I think very similar to Jos Plateau State, it's good for coffee cultivation. So that's what I studied. That was my first foray into agriculture, was studying coffee cultivation in Guatemala. And specifically, I studied about a coffee rust. Rust is in a fungus. So it's a bad contaminant that can get into coffee production, coffee plants. They call it a rust because it gives off this reddish tinge, this hue on the leaves, and eventually it'll starve the plant. So I looked at the decisions that farmers make when they're confronted with challenge in production coffee rust. Doing my studies there, I also helped cultivate coffee, and I realized that you're working in the mountains, so there's no flat land anywhere, so you're constantly climbing up and down the mountain. It's very hot, it's tropical, and get rid of all the weeds, all the plants that are growing around it. There's no mechanization whatsoever. There's two types of coffee in the world, of Robusta and Arabica. Robusta, as the name implies, Robusta, robust. It's easy to, but the taste is not the same. So the taste is not as fine, not as aromatic. They do grow. I know there's Arabica being grown in Jos Plateau State, and so Arabica has a little better flavors, but it's much harder to grow. You have to grow at higher elevations. I think for meters, it might be 1,200 meters. I deal with feet, so I know it's roughly about between 4,500 and 5,000 feet. So again, you're working on the side of a mountain. And so anyways, that was my first foray into agriculture. And it got me interested in how other countries are dealing with changes in technology, changes in climate, changes in international markets with agriculture. Not just bulk commodities, but also then you get into consumer-oriented goods like foods and beverages, packaged products. So I really, that introduction into coffee led me to apply to the U.S. Department of Agriculture as an agriculture diplomat. And so I was very lucky to be, after several rounds of exams and interviews, I was accepted into the service. And so I think I've been in for a little bit, maybe around roughly 15 years. My time, I spent time in Washington, D.C., learning a lot about what the different headquarters, offices, divisions, how they operate. And so right now I work for the Foreign Agricultural Service. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture, very similar to like the Ministry of Agriculture in Nigeria, has a huge domestic focus, right? So you're looking at domestic farmers. What can you do to help domestic farmers? The Foreign Agricultural Service is a little bit different because we certainly focus on the interests of American farmers, exporting American food and agricultural products to the rest of the world. We're also focused on what's happening in other parts of the world. So it's a great job because I get to learn a lot about what's happening in America, in the agriculture market, but also what's happening in other countries. So it's been really a fascinating foray into the agriculture sector. I never saw myself here maybe 20, 30 years ago, but it's been a wonderful career so far. And I think, one of the benefits is you never go hungry, right? There's always people that are trying to urge you and suggest, hey, try this, try that. So it's one of those benefits. So that's kind of my origin story of how I got started into the agriculture sector and as an agricultural diplomat. I can tell just a few stories of where I've been, and I'll focus on some great experiences I've had in Nigeria. I know the folks online can't see this. I won't show them. I could probably show it on the camera if I really wanted to, but I'll show the folks in this room. I wear shoes. These shoes you can work farming, agriculture. These are not kind of businessman shoes. I wear these on purpose. Of course, 99% of my time I'm in an office, or I'm meeting with people in offices, or I'm not in the field producing. But I keep my humility about myself, and I never forget who I represent. Farmers and ranchers, they are the hardest workers. One of the hardest workers. There's a lot of folks in the medical field. My first job was as a teacher. Teachers are also very hard workers, but farmers are incredibly hardworking. It's dangerous work. I've done it before, like I mentioned, in coffee production. And so I wear these shoes kind of on purpose. They're a little bit more comfortable, first of all, but also because I always want to remember that I represent farmers and their interests. So my first foray overseas formally on behalf of the U.S. government was to go to China. And that was a fantastic experience. China and the United States, we have a lot of similarities, also a lot of differences. The languages, certainly very different. So I learned Spanish and Spanish, English, French, Italian, those, they call them the Romance languages. You can kind of hear and sometimes understand what people might be saying, because the languages are connected. They have a similar root. But Chinese is very different. So I was, here I thought I was going to go in and study more about agriculture, but I studied Chinese for a whole year, and that was my full-time job. That's what I did from morning until night, every single day. I had one teacher, and I was her only student. And so again, when you think you're going to go in as an agriculture diplomat, okay, I'm going to learn more about coffee, cassava, this. No, you're going to learn a new language. So it was very humbling because you're starting out, you feel very much like maybe like a 3 or 4 year old would, because I remember the teacher pushing these things, characters, right? They don't have an alphabet. Chinese, there's no alphabet. Mandarin Chinese, there's no alphabet. There's just the characters. And I remember her pushing them across the table and telling me to read them. And how do you read them? There's nothing to sound out. There's no alphabet. You just look at it, and I'm like, she had shown me, but they all look the same. And right? I mean, how do you tell them apart? But little by little, just word by word, I remember it was like you, me, her, him, it, and just word by word, day by day. But it was very humbling starting from zero, knowing nothing. And so that was a fascinating aspect of this job that I didn't necessarily go in thinking. Again, you're so focused on your sector, your expertise, your research, and now you're doing something completely having nothing to do with agriculture. So now you're learning and you're in school again. It was an incredibly, humbling experience. And there's a test at the end. And so it's also a little nerve-wracking because you have to pass the test in order to stay in the service. If you want to be a diplomat, you have to prove that you can speak other languages. Although I spoke Spanish, but it was quite nerve-wracking. But after 9 months, I've successfully passed the test. So it was it was a great relief. And then I went to China, and I was there for 4 years, and it was an amazing experience. I had traveled there briefly for work purposes a few times, but this was my first time with, all of our bags. We had 2 young children. I'm married, and so I had 2 young children at that time. And my daughter said, "Well, when you said something about moving to China, I thought you were joking, or wasn't sure if it was serious." She was a little girl at that time. But she said, I expected, though, when we arrived that we would see pandas everywhere, right? There'd be pandas walking around, eating bamboo, because that's kind of what you see in some of the movies and some of the cartoons. But Beijing it's a very large city. So it's large, just like Lagos. Although their buildings are taller, a lot more cars, motorcycles. It's even more packed, and even, I would say, a little bit more chaotic than Lagos, believe it or not. So it was also a great culture shock, moving to a big city, and new languages, new currency, new money. Is the $5 bill, because you don't want to mix them up, right? Make sure people give you the right change. So it was a fascinating experience. But I was able to travel around all around the country, and China is a fascinating country because it's so diverse, and geographically, climate-wise, and certainly in agriculture. So they have tropical areas that are very much like Nigerian agriculture. So they grow a lot of cassava, berries, all sorts of different products. North of Beijing, where I lived, it looks very much like it would in the Great Plains of the United States, in Nebraska or South Dakota or Iowa, our big ag states. So they grow a lot of corn, they grow a lot of soy, a lot of wheat. So it was interesting traveling around the different parts of the country. And their food is also amazingly diverse. As an American eating Chinese food in America, you have a certain concept of what you think is Chinese food, and then you get to China, and you can eat the true, authentic, and then you go to different regions, and you see how the different regions change the culinary styles. And it's, again, as an American, most of the Chinese restaurants in America are similar. They've been adapted to American tastes. And I know some Chinese restaurants around Lagos as well. I've been to them, and same thing. They have, they've adapted to Nigerian tastes a little bit. And I can notice some of the recipes, how they change it. It's because they want Nigerians to keep coming back. But in China, I did have to implement a rule, though, with my staff. So I would travel with my local staff, and I would say, okay, I'm only going to eat something if you also are open to eating it, because it's the diversity of. I wasn't even sure what I was eating. Is this a plant? Is this an animal? Is this a fish? Is this what type of sauce it is? So it was, just amazing the type of creativity. They have, 5,000 years of culinary expertise. And I mean, we all do, right? All cultures around the world, but it's something I have traveled many times, in short stays all around Africa, Latin America, different parts of Asia and Europe. But the culinary experience in China was absolutely amazing. So, I've somehow managed to stay thin, but we did a lot of eating. So a lot of food, agriculture, beverages. I think one of my hardest jobs, I thought it was going to be easy and fun, but I was asked to be a judge at a walnut dessert tasting competition, because in the United States, we produce walnuts. Walnuts, I'm not sure if you're aware, but walnuts it's a tree nut. So similar to almonds, different than peanuts, but kind of similar to peanuts, but they're not ground nuts. They grow in trees. So, in the United States, China produces a lot of walnuts, but The United States also produces a lot of walnuts. They're a little bit different. So China imports U.S. American walnuts from California. And so what we were doing is we were judging chefs who were using American walnuts in desserts and dishes. And so I was, the first, they were like 35 to taste. Now the first 2 or 3 or 4 were wonderful, but then you 5, 6, your 7th one, your 8th one, and it's a lot of cream and sugar. And okay, by the 20th one, you're like, okay, I need to take very small bites because I don't think I'm going to make it to 35. So anyways, it's one of those, another surprising thing of agricultural diplomacy. You don't realize how much you're gonna spend judging other people's foods, and how difficult it is, because at first it sounds wonderful, but then again, after you're there for a while, it got very difficult. But it was a fun experience. So China was wonderful because there was and looking at bulk commodities like corn and soy and wheat, but then doing a lot of food and beverages, yogurt drinks. There's a really amazing. There's a lot of China's doing a lot of things because what they're doing is importing American products and then adding value, changing it, combining it with their own ingredients, and selling those products to their consumers. So that was China. After I spent about 4 years, a little bit over 4 years in China, I went to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is in Central Asia, so it is, as the name implies, it's in Asia, but it's kind of smack dab in the middle. Kazakhstan is actually it's the largest landlocked country. So they have countries all around them. They have no ocean, so it's the largest landlocked country in the world. Ethiopia, I think, might be, for example, that's a landlocked country in Africa. They have no access to the ocean. Kazakhstan is also landlocked, no access to the ocean, but it's a much larger country. And it's kind of in the middle of Russia, China, and then the other countries that end in stan are on. So like Iran, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan. I think I might have mentioned them all. So it's a really interesting country because its culture is multifaceted and diverse. I would think sometimes if I ever parachuted down into Kazakhstan, let's just say hypothetically, parachuted out of a plane, blindfolded, nobody told me where I was, and I took my blindfold off. And I just started taking a look at people and maybe hearing them speak or looking at the land. I wouldn't really know where I was. It's not obvious. So the diversity is incredible. It's a little bit like Europe. It's a little bit like Asia. It's a little bit like the Middle East. You have Christians, you have Muslims, and then you have a lot of other religions as well. But so it's very diverse. But it's a flat country for the most part. They do have some mountains, but for the most part, most of the country is pretty flat, and they produce a lot of wheat, legumes, so things like beans, different beans, lentils. Lentils is very big, oats. So it's flat, and they can grow a lot of those crops that require a lot of machinery and irrigation. So Kazakhstan was probably similar. They were the 8th largest wheat producer in the world. So a major wheat producer, and they export it primarily regionally because, again, they don't have access to the ocean, so they can't get the product out to the rest of the world. So they primarily export to neighboring countries like Uzbekistan, especially wheat. So I had a really wonderful time driving overland all over the country. It's also one of the coldest countries. I think Astana at some time, I've read, I know sometimes people have different weather statistics, but it's the coldest capital city in the world, even colder than Stockholm in Europe or Moscow in Russia. So Astana, they call it Astana. Astana means capital in their Kazakh language. It's the coldest capital city in the world. So sometimes it would get to negative 30, 40, 50 below zero. Almost as soon as you go outside, you can feel parts of your body freezing. I mean, you can literally feel like your nose, like it starts to freeze. It's quite amazing. Sometimes it's hard to breathe in. The air is so cold. So I grew up in New York State. We had snow there. It was cold there, but Kazakhstan, it was amazingly cold. But the winters, interestingly, the winters are very beautiful, blue skies. They don't get that much snow, just enough for it to be fun, for your kids to play, make snowballs with, but it doesn't. I can't hear you. Daniel?
Yeah,
you're calling me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Am I doing good on my story, or am I taking too long?
Yes, you are doing so good on your story, and I can tell you that a lot of our audience are very fascinated by your story. But just a quick one, just to draw your attention back so that we take a lot from you before you go. Understanding fully well how much you love agriculture and being an agriculturist over time, and I know a lot of our audience will be wondering, how did you transition to becoming a diplomat, and what exactly has been your motivation?
Okay. Something about becoming a diplomat. Can you maybe just say that again?
Yes. My question is, I said I know a lot of our audience might be wondering, oh, because of the experiences you have had, how you share your experiences working around agriculture, how have you been able to transition from an agriculturist to become a diplomat? What exactly has been your motivation so far?
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I was telling my story, Daniel. Yeah. No, in my transition, it's been a gradual transition. So I think, like I said, I wear these shoes on purpose because I never want to fully transition away from being a farmer, a producer, even if it's not something I didn't grow up as. Again, my family's not from a farming family, but I do remember how difficult it is to be farming, to be a farmer, because farmers, you're on your land, and there's all of these external factors that are affecting you, whether you like it or not. And I think it's true about everybody, but I think especially a farmer, there's these world events that are happening. There's these national events that are happening. And then there's weather and there's climate. And all of these things you cannot control. And you can't control prices. You can't control costs of your inputs. You can't control the weather. You can't control the climate. So there's all these things you can't control, but what you can control is what you do on your land. And that's what I've learned over and over again, is that farmers are, they're always thinking about risk. They're always thinking about what can go wrong, but they're perpetual optimists. They're always thinking of the best case scenario. And I think they're hardworking. They're always thinking to the future. They're thinking to their family. How can I take this land that I'm working on and pass it on to my children? So I think I keep that in mind in my daily job. In Nigeria, Nigeria is blessed with the most agricultural, the most arable land of any other country in Africa. You guys have wonderful access to the ocean and ports. You have wonderful navigable rivers. You have a lot of water, relatively speaking. I know it gets drier up north, but compared to some other countries, even to Kazakhstan, you have a lot of water. You have a huge, wonderful, educated labor force who has many, many years, many generations of experience producing agriculture. So there's immense opportunity in Nigeria in the agriculture space. But I know that there's also challenges as well. So it's going to be always the younger generation that's going to have to think about how they can fix some of those challenges and overcome those challenges. And I know it's not easy. As a diplomat, what I'm trying to do in Nigeria is to bridge the U.S. and Nigerian agricultural cooperation, so to improve and increase agricultural cooperation, because our farmers, American farmers, can learn from Nigeria, and I think also Nigerians can learn from American farmers, and so that's a lot of our programs and projects are bringing people together. I also try to bring together the private sector, so not just producers, but also uh, the private sector. So I try to attract American businesses, agribusinesses into Nigeria to see what it's like on the ground. I've been here for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years. I love it here. I have my family here. It's been a wonderful experience for us. But sometimes, people maybe see a news report and back in the U.S. and they think Nigeria is one thing. I tell them you have to come out here and see it for yourself. And as soon as you get to Lagos, you will know what it's like. It is an amazing, diverse, exciting, vibrant, beautiful country. So I'm always trying to attract Americans to come out here and see it for themselves. I tell them, I can show you around. It's amazing. It's fun. I hope you like spicy food, though, because that's one thing I've learned. Whew. I thought the food was spicy in China. Wow, no, that's nothing. You guys have some very same thing. In Guatemala and Mexico, they have pepper too, but not like the pepper here. Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you
So
so
I
much,
know.
Chris. Thank you so much. I completely understand your sentiment towards being a farmer. And I understand your love for farmers because I'm also a farmer. Just to mention that quickly. So you've actually said you've tested a lot of food in the course of your tour in different posts and all of that. What food exactly have you tested here in Nigeria?
Yeah, I mean, some of the names I don't even, I'm not even sure what they're called. I've stopped asking what are they called. But,
What do they look like?
I mean, I like all the snack foods. So I like the kalishi, the beef jerky, right? It's spicy and it's fun it's like a good snack, and I like what is the other kuli? Is that what it is? Yeah, I like that. I like all those snack foods. So yeah, it's spicy, and I eat the ball food, and that's fun, and yeah. So I like the meat dishes. I've had goat and all the different those dishes, and so yeah, it's all fun, and I get same thing. I mean, I had no idea what Nigerian food was like until I got here,
Okay.
and it's
Okay.
quite amazing. And same thing, very diverse but spicy.
Okay, Chris, thank you so much. Please, for those of you who have questions, please, you can actually send your questions via the chat box and we'll read them out properly. But before we start taking questions from our participants, let me ask this last question. So, what exactly has actually been your challenges? What kind of challenges have you encountered as being a diplomat? What have been your major challenges?
Okay, Daniel. Yeah, I can't quite hear perfectly, but something about a challenge for farmers.
Yes, no, my question is, as a diplomat, I know you've encountered some challenges moving from one tour to another over time. So what are the challenges you've encountered as a diplomat?
Oh, the challenges I've had as a diplomat. How many hours do I have to answer?
You have 2 minutes.
It's a joke. I know it's a joke. Yeah, I mean the challenge is, um, uh, uh, you know, it's always uh, you're you're in a new environment with new people, different culture, different languages. So I think it's amazingly, what I find is that farmers around the world are remarkably similar. So there's not a lot of difference. The challenges faced by American farmer in California watch this as a diplomat is people.
Yes, we sincerely apologize uh, for the breaking transmission. Josephine, can you hear me? I think we lost Chris.
I can hear you, Dan.
I think we lost Chris.
It's
It's
connection problem. Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Loud and clear.
It's connection problem. We're trying to fix it.
All right, thank you.
It's okay now. Okay. Oh, Chris, you might like to take that again. They lost you virtually. I mean, the connection.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So I'll take it again then.
It's good now. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge of being a diplomat is you're going to different countries, and it's exciting and it's fun, but it's also challenging day to day because you're away from your loved ones, and there's a different climate, and Kazakhstan, like I mentioned, it's one of the coldest countries in the world, so we had heavy jackets and gloves and hats. Sometimes I would have to wear 2 or 3 pants when I go outside because it's so cold. And then I come to Nigeria, and now it's all you can wear shorts, t-shirts if you want. I try not to wear too many suits, and I want to stay light, and so. But it's a challenge going from one extreme to the other. It's hard. It is challenging. It's fun, but it's also challenging going from one to the other.
Okay. Let me quickly take some questions from our participants. The first question here is, how do we connect to your community of farmers to cross-pollinate opportunities? How do we connect to your community of farmers to cross-pollinate opportunities?
Yeah, that's a good question. On your own, I've met a lot of Nigerian and American farmers that have just met on their own without our engagement. So they meet in other parts of the world. A lot of farmers they're traveling to trade shows. So it does sometimes require a little bit of resources. You need to travel elsewhere, maybe outside Nigeria, outside the region, either in West Africa, in Accra, Ghana, or in Europe, or if you do have the resources to go to the United States or another country. But I've met, there's a lot of Nigerians and Americans are just meeting. There's also a lot of Nigerian Americans or Nigerians living in America, and they've also met up with Americans that way. So, outside of our office, Americans are very curious and engaging. And, one of my best friends in college was Nigerian. And that was my first, because before college in my grade school team, one of my best friends, and he was from Nigeria. So, there's a lot of people to meet. In terms of our programs and projects, we do exchange programs. So we'll take a group of Nigerians back to the United States to learn a specific aspect of Nigeria, of American agriculture. So we'll choose a topic. A lot of people, you'll require some studying agriculture, or you have a business in agriculture. And we do have application periods. We also do trade shows. For example, we'll be exhibiting at the Food and Beverage West Africa trade show that's June 9th to 11th in Lagos at Landmark Center. So we'll have Americans coming to that food and beverage trade show. So we do try to do exchanges and try to bring businesses over here.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's take this question from Oka. It says, when initiating an international agricultural collaboration, how do you balance domestic priorities with partner countries' need to design projects that deliver win-win outcome?
That's a great question. I mean, I think that's that's the heart of diplomacy. I think is you're always looking for win-win outcomes. You're looking for mutually beneficial exchanges, and you're trying to see, what can we do? What can we offer? What can we provide? How can we help each other? And so in agriculture, what we're really focused on is what types of products can American farmers produce, send to Nigeria to help Nigerian agriculture and Nigerian farmers, Nigerian businesses. So we're not producing products that would hurt your farmers. We're not producing cassava. We're not producing cocoa beans. There's things that we can't produce that we need to buy from Nigeria. We buy a lot of cocoa beans and other products, but we're focused on providing what a lot of our businesses they call ingredient solutions. Nigerian producers that will help them. For example, one thing is specialty animal feed ingredients. So sometimes when you go to the store, roughly 70% of the price is influenced by feed. So if feed is expensive, your chicken's going to be expensive. Okay, and we've seen the prices go up, and a lot of that has to do with shortages in feed. There's many types of feed components. So chickens, when you can feed them many different types of things, different items cost different. There's different prices. Prices of different feed ingredients are always changing. So some years Nigeria might have a glut of corn or of another ingredient that you can feed chickens. It's cheap and it won't hurt the price of chicken. But then there's other years where there might be a shortage. Prices might be really high because, for example, if you take corn, for example, a lot of Nigerians also eat corn. But if you're taking that corn, you're feeding it to chickens, that means there's less for humans for people to eat. So there's always kind of this balance, and the market's balancing. So what I'm focused a lot on in this office is what can we provide Nigeria that will help Nigerian businesses, Nigerian farmers, producers. So we're active in the poultry sector. We're active in the aquaculture sector, raising fish, catfish, snails. Because I know the price of snails, I know the price of catfish has gone way up. I just finished, we were looking at a report on that, and I think, I forget the kg. I saw a graph, but the graph is just price of catfish was stable, and then all of a sudden in 2023, it went way up. So I know a lot of that had to do with the currency devaluation and a lot of other aspects. But what we're trying to do is help Nigeria bring food costs down, providing different solutions to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. Let's take a question from Uyo quickly. Uyo, your hand is up. Please unmute and ask your question.
Good afternoon, sir. What is your advice to students out there coming to believe that farming is a dirty job, thus killing their passion?
That's a great question. I know farming in Nigeria, I know sometimes it's tough to make a living. I know, and it's very different in the United States because farming in the United States is actually quite profitable, and it's sometimes it's hard to get started because the prices of land, for example, it's hard to acquire some land sometimes in the United States. But anyways, farmers in the United States, there's always challenges, but overall, it's a good business. It's something that I would recommend my children to get involved in. And in Nigeria, I know there's challenges. But there's a immense opportunity in the agriculture sector, and so I would say, farming it's definitely a way of life. You're providing food for people, for your family, but also to think of it as a business. And so if you want to export products either internationally to other countries, or if you want to export outside of Lagos State, for example, Ogun State, and you want to sell to other states, you want to look at agriculture as a business, and you want to see what does the market need. As I mentioned before about like ingredient solutions, you want to think about what can I produce that will help solve a problem. And that's a huge advantage. If you can try to solve somebody's problem that they have, then you're gonna find a ready market for your products. But I do sometimes I encounter people and they have their heart set on something. They say, well, I have ginger. I have a lot of ginger. I like producing ginger, and I'm going to sell people ginger. It's like, okay, well, when I think in my mind sometimes, but what if I don't like ginger, right? What if the market doesn't want it? What if prices are not that good? Then maybe you need to switch and think about other products. So that kind of being nimble, seeing farming as a business, land and climate, you can always grow different things. And so like I mentioned, I got engaged in coffee production, but coffee on that same land, you can grow other types of products. So people were starting to grow, do you know what? Maybe competing with Nigeria a little bit, cocoa beans, right? So I saw them starting to plant cocoa. Now this was many years ago, but this is because coffee prices were low and cocoa prices were higher. So it's always like you're always thinking, I think that's my biggest advice for young farmers getting involved, is that there are huge opportunities, but you have to think outside the box. You can't just necessarily do what your father or your mother did. You have to think of what the market needs. People's tastes are changing, constantly changing. I'm a big, I love history, reading about the history of food. Capsaicin peppers, they originated actually in Mexico and Guatemala. So a few hundred years ago, there were no capsaicin peppers anywhere else in the world, not in Nigeria. But now it's a huge part of your diet. The number 2 sorghum producer in the world? The number 2 sorghum producer in the world, behind Nigeria. Nigeria is number 1. The second largest producer in the world, sorghum. Sorghum is from northern Nigeria. It's indigenous to Africa, to northern Nigeria. The number 2 producer is the United States. So we've taken sorghum and we've adapted it to our country, and now it's a huge crop in our country. We don't eat it that much. We use it a lot for animal feed. So that's just an example of how you can take products from other countries, or you could repurpose land, and you have to respond to markets. But there's immense opportunity for young farmers.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Inugu. Inugu, unmute and ask your question. We can't hear you, Inugu. We still cannot hear you, Inugu. Okay, while Inugu is sorting that out, let's go to Calabar. Calabar, please unmute and ask your question. Calabar, unmute and ask your question now. Okay, it seems the people in Calabar can't hear me, but can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, so Calabar, unmute and ask your question. Calabar is not ready. So let's go back to the chat box and take a question quickly. In your experience as an agricultural diplomat, how does tech impact the business of agriculture, and how can young unemployed people take advantage of it? Please, I don't know
about technology?
Yeah, did you get a question?
Yeah, I think about technology
Yes, in your experience as an
affecting agriculture?
diplomat, yeah, how does tech impact the business of agriculture, and how
Yeah.
can young unemployed people
Yeah,
take
no,
advantage of it?
it's a great question.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know that it's a great question. I think I'm going to answer in a way that maybe you might not expect. Um, but it's something that I learned from my wonderful agricultural professors in the university. Technology, think of technology in your mind. Just think about it in your mind. Technology. What comes to mind? What comes to mind when you think about technology? Televisions, computers, phones, gadgets. Exactly. Most people think the hardware, right, about technology. Well, my professors told me, and I think this is perfect for agriculture, is that technology is also a way of thinking. It's a new way of thinking. Technology is not just hardware. I think society now, where when you hear tech, you think computer programs and phones, and so in agriculture, you're thinking irrigation, tractors, right? All those tech things, AI and GIS, which is like satellite technology. But I would argue that what's needed the most in agriculture and adoption of technology is the ways of doing things a little bit differently, and that's what I was speaking just about young farmers. That's why you need young farmers to come in and think about doing things differently. I heard stories, for example, of there's a dairy byproduct that's called whey protein. Whey, it's spelled WHEY. And so when you produce cheese, when you produce dairy products, you get whey, this like leftover stuff, right? Dairy farmers, they told me that when they would produce this dairy whey powder, before it was even powder, but just dairy whey, what they said is they didn't know what to do with it, so they would spread it on their fields as fertilizer, just essentially get rid of it. Then they found out, no, you can distill it into powder and you can sell it as like a protein. And now we're huge exporters of dairy protein, the dairy whey, to the rest of the world. In fact, we export a lot of dairy whey to China because they have a scarcity of it. So that's just an example of like people thinking about a new way of doing things. It's like, wait a second, we don't have to use this product as fertilizer. Maybe there's people or businesses that need this product. Let's go out and see. And so I found that absolutely amazing that they were just spreading it on their fields as fertilizer. But now, if you go to the store, I don't know, in Nigeria, maybe it's not as popular. In the United States, whey powder is very, very popular. So if you get a little can of it, it'll be like 50 USD. A little jar of it, 50 USD. In the old days, they would just spread it on the fields. Just think about that. So when I think of technology, harnessing technology, it's about the new way of doing things.
Thank you very much.
The other stuff, I think once you figure out a new way of doing things, then you can think about the other types of technology, which is like satellites and computers and AI and drones and all these other fun things. Those things cost a lot of money. Guess what technology you need to think creatively and innovatively? You don't need anything.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris. So our last question, our time is actually half spent. Our last question for today will be, we have a lot of young Nigerians, young audience who are listening to you right now. There are a lot of them, some are already into agribusiness. What advice would you actually give these young people regarding agriculture, especially as it relates to Nigeria? Over to you.
Some advice for young farmers: don't quit, don't give up. It's life in general, right? But certainly for farming, you're going to have some good years and bad years. And so in farming, there is a book I read. It's called 40 Chances, where when a young farmer starts out and maybe takes over the business from their mother or father, they have about 40 harvests, 40 years before then they get older, 40 years. In the United States, most farmers, we produce one crop 1 year. We don't have the tropical climate of Nigeria. We can produce things maybe 2 or 3 years. So there's a book that's called 40 Chances. You have 40 chances to get things right, and it might take a while to get it right. So I think for young farmers, don't quit. Sometimes markets, again, you can't control the climate, you can't control weather, you can't control market prices, global events. So certain years are going to be tough. Don't give up. Build that into your calculations. I've received a lot of investor pitch decks from Nigerians, and all of the pitch decks are, almost all of them are overly ambitious. They're imagining the best case scenario, but you always have to allot about 20%, at least 20%. Something's gonna go wrong, right? You're gonna get a disease. You're gonna get, prices are gonna jump 20% for foil or fertilizer. So you always have to build that like at least 20% contingency. So for young farmers, don't give up. Keep going. You're gonna have some bad years. It's inevitable. But also, build in a contingency plan. And again, I would say, think about that technology aspect of how can you do things a little bit differently. Especially here in Nigeria, you have immense opportunity to grow so many products. Many parts of the world, like for example, I gave you Kazakhstan as an example. The climate, the weather, you can only grow about, you only have like 3 or 4 months to grow something. You have to get your corn, wheat, soy, legumes in the ground and grow them in 4 months. That's it. The rest of the year, it's so cold you can't grow anything. The fields are completely barren, no green in sight. In Nigeria, you can grow things all year round. There's all types of products. So think creatively about that kind of like soft technology aspect of what other products are out there that people are not growing, and test things out. Test things out little by little. Do a pilot project, a pilot plot, and go from there.
Thank you very much, Chris. It has been a very exciting moment with you. I have learned a lot, and I believe majority of our audience seated across our network of American species across Nigeria have also learned so much from you today. Please, can we just quickly put our together for Chris, please, everyone?
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It was quite educative for our audience, and we do appreciate it. We hope to see you some other time. Thank you so much for coming on our program.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you had a wonderful session with us today, and we hope to see you in some of our programs sometime next week, and we hope that you all keep a date with us. Thank you all so much for being part of today's program. Bye for now.